In the annals of time, riding social forces as they crest and crash onto the shores of history, some would-be heroes stumble but manage to recover their breath. Others are reduced to the flotsam and jetsam of nostalgia. These others are our subjects. They are the vanquished, 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 vanquished.
Hello and welcome to the Vanquished. Anders J. Lee here with my co-host Freddie G.
So happy to be here.
We're joined by, I think, our first returning guest, if I'm not mistaken.
Defending champion.
Yes, Alex Ptak. Alex is, for two reasons, kind of an expert here because he's from Massachusetts, where our subject is from, and also voted for this subject at a time, actually, when not a lot of people were doing it. You can say that about two elections, 2012.
You can say it about everyone.
We both voted for Jill Stein in 2012 and 16, but you also voted for her in 2020.
That's right. I plan on voting for her for every election for the rest of my life because she's number one, and I support winners here.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say I have a great niche of being from Massachusetts for the failed presidential candidates podcast.
Hey, man.
Where all of them come from.
It's like having a friend from Texas when you're doing an oil podcast.
Absolutely.
It's rich.
Can I just say I'm sick of these oil podcasts, by the way. How many of these do we need to hear?
I think some of them are pretty slick, if you ask me. But
Hey, now.
I think they're very crude.
there we go. But Jill Stein, I mean, so you in 2020, this has been a mistake that's come up. AOC made this mistake. She said, Jill Stein, three-time presidential candidate. She did not run in 2020. She's a Green Party nominee in 12 and 16. Howie Hawkins was the nominee in 20. I did also vote for him, safe place at the time, D.C.
I wrote in Jill Stein.
She wrote in Jill Stein as a bit.
I believe in her.
Which now she's come back around, and in many states, it's looking like New York as well. She's going to be a write-in candidate. It doesn't look like
Win. This is her year.
I mean, third time's a charm, as they say.
Do you remember? And I think this was I want to say it was 2020, but I guess she wasn't running. But they did what all the presidential candidates looked like as in their youth, like college age youth, and they're just like, look how handsome Donald Trump is. Jill Stein was beautiful.
Yeah, sure.
This is the thing about vanquished people is they're the hottest people. They had great success, and then they get humiliated in front of everybody and become known as losers.
Shame brought low.
Yeah, and for many of them, it's their first time being. See, I never bought that.
I've never seen young Ajamu Baraka, but I bet it was great.
Ooh, I mean, he has the earring thing that I'm into, which
it's true, the Anders Lee style earring.
He has one ear
Green
pierced.
Party VP nominee Ajamu Baraka.
I mean, it's a similar shtick, thing that Ed Bradley did, who was a 60 Minutes journalist, that made me want to get my ear pierced as a young man.
Your vibe is kind of Green Party second gentleman candidate.
Yeah.
Bring some of the girls along.
I mean, there is an expression that Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for ugly people. And I never thought that was true because there's a lot of good-looking politicians who go into it because they have an ego from that, I think.
It's podcasting is Hollywood for ugly people.
Yes.
This is where the real ugly people are. Sorry, go ahead.
You got a real face for radio, as the saying goes. I will say politicians, when they get ugly, get like more ugly than actors are allowed to get. Like I would say Paul Giamatti is like your ugly actor.
Right.
Where he's like just kind of like normal looking ish. He looks like a little weird compared to, I don't know.
Trump is pretty ugly right now.
Yeah,
Trump is ugly, but he's like
bad.
90 years old.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of politicians. They never have to stop.
They
Well,
never
Biden,
stop. Yep.
Biden, look at young Biden. He's was an attractive man, and then he's Irish, and bad things happen to us eventually.
He's mostly German.
Like Bruce Willis had to...
Let's
That's
get this up front.
So Bruce Willis had to stop acting because he didn't know what the hell he was doing. But if he was a president, he would still currently be president.
They would be dragging him from room to room as he starts war after war.
There you go. So, who is Jill Stein? Her middle name is actually Ellen, which I didn't know. Jill Ellen Stein.
Jill Ellen Stein.
Jill Ellen. And she's a doctor. of course, she is not originally from Massachusetts. She's from the Chicago suburbs. And as a kid, I found this out. She loved collecting butterflies. That
goes
informs
with her persona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
So she should have collected caterpillars and figured they could become butterflies. That's kind of more third party. Yeah.
That's what a Democratic candidate would do. Is take the practical approach.
Yeah.
To butterfly collection.
Can I say why I wanted to do her? So yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
not
Yes.
sexually, but on the pod. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
not young anymore,
Gomez at it again.
this is my first election as a leftist. I've always voted for the Democrat. And anytime you hear anything about Jill Stein, it's insanely pro or against her. So we're gonna talk about her like normal humans who don't she's not that important, and you could just talk about her and see what's real about her.
These are just three normal humans who want to have sex with Jill.
Yeah.
There's good and bad about her.
Yeah, you guys have voted
for criticism.
Yeah. You guys have voted for her, but you don't have insane affection for her.
I don't know a damn thing about her. Here's the thing about third-party voting: is it doesn't matter what the person's like; they're not gonna win. It's just a personal fuck you note to the Democrats.
That's what I'm looking for.
That's the only established purpose. I understand why people say not to do that in heavily contested states, but also it's kind of a better fuck you letter if it's in a contested state.
Right.
I share no values with the Democrats. I don't want them to have my vote. I hate those guys.
But it also is worth reminding people in New York and most states in America, it does not matter, and just drives me crazy.
All but two.
Yeah. People are obsessed with...
Basically, any state where everyone's on Twitter doesn't count for the election.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of framing it. But she was the daughter of a lawyer who was a quote-unquote small business attorney. I saw an interview where she was like, yes, small business, basically.
Drug
saying
dealer.
He's a corporate lawyer.
Oh.
And it got spun as small business.
How is that a euphemism for corporate lawyer?
I mean, it's one of those, in America, you can define a small business as 1,000, not 1,000, but they have loose criteria for a small business.
Burger King is a small business compared to the McDonald's franchise.
There you go. But her family was not very political, but they were pro-civil rights. They were kind of, liberals.
In this house, we believe.
Right. But
butterflies.
They were not in, they were divided. The household was divided over Vietnam. And that's kind of one of her first exposures to politics.
And I guess that's funny to imagine now because it seems like all of American culture has come out against Vietnam. Whoopsies. But, I was around when we went to war in Iraq and we're doing the Israeli genocide now. And you still talk to people and everyone is split on these obvious, morally black issues. It's just people don't want to stand up for them at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And as the last episode we did was on John Kerry, and he was, of course, against the Vietnam War, and then Iraq. And that was the refrain during Iraq was this is not Vietnam, this is not Vietnam, this is not Vietnam. In every significant way, it was Vietnam.
It's way dumber.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense with the lie we made up.
Right.
Yeah, George Bush did 2 Vietnams.
Yeah.
We said that on the Dick Cheney episode.
The thing Vietnam had going for it is you could tell all of the people who don't have computers yet you're doing the ultimate Cold War battle with Russia, and they wouldn't look into it, and they'd be like, oh yeah, so that sounds right.
Yeah,
we're killing communists like they have in Russia. It's the same thing.
Similar thing, but with terrorism. But Jill was kind of radicalized through an experiment in international living trip, which was a thing in the 60s. She went abroad with a group of young people from America, including a socialist from New York and an African-American from Watts, California. And they went to Sweden, and that kind of changed her.
I'm picturing the Dreamers.
Yeah.
I feel like we've discussed the Dreamers before.
The Dreamers?
There's an HBO movie. It came out in 2004, and it's just 3, I think it was 3 Americans, or maybe 1 American staying with a French couple in Paris, and then they have freaky period sex, really graphic.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah. I've seen that with the Bertolucci movie.
I think I've talked to you about this before.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what Jill Stein was doing in Sweden, as far as I understand. I don't really know what that movie was about, but it was gross.
Is it kind of like Challengers for us young?
It's way grosser than Challengers. It's night and day disgusting compared to Challengers.
It has Michael Pitt in it. It's one of those movies.
There's no sex in Challengers on screen.
Yeah.
Not like there was in The Dreamers.
Right. It's It's made by a guy who, like an Italian filmmaker French or Italian filmmaker from the '60s who, by the early 2000s, is just an old pervert.
Yeah,
And everything.
He's a sicko.
Yeah, and he has these people doing nasty stuff. I mean, we don't have to get into.
It's Jill Stein coded.
Yeah, she does have a hippie vibe, and that can annoy some people.
I think that's the main thing held against her mostly. Nobody is like super dialed in on Jill Stein's positions.
Yeah, except for John Oliver, which we'll get to.
I am now. I know every one of her positions.
Well, I expect you to now as we're doing a podcast on it.
Yeah, she has questions about Wi-Fi. I did learn that.
Oh,
She
right.
does. Okay.
I want to know how-fi.
But
Is this thing on?
she ends up in Massachusetts because her mom basically tells her, you got to go to Harvard. She comes from a nice Jewish household, and they're like, you got to, and you got to be a striver. You got to go for the Ivy League and become something like a doctor.
This is when that meant something, honey.
Yeah. And she is okay with that at the time. She's a good student, goes to Harvard, and then, this is during Vietnam, as we said, in the 60s, things happening. And she becomes a little more political and wants to work with the Harvard Community Health Clinic, which helps out underprivileged people. But she finds it increasingly becomes less about community, and she tries to find other ways to help the disadvantaged. As a doctor, eventually she joins Physicians for Social Responsibility, which deals with environmental health crises.
Mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, you have a mouthful of lead in you have cereal with lead in it, stuff like that. Waste dumps that infect people, give people diseases. She graduates in 1973, magna cum laude from Harvard.
Good for you.
She studied psychology, sociology, anthropology. I've also heard she was in the same class as Bonnie Raitt, if I'm not mistaken.
Who's Bonnie Raitt?
Singer. Angel from Montgomery. I think she's a really good
I had kind of heard of her. I mean, in general, it'd be cool if these people made songs for her, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, she needs catchy stuff. Jill Stein. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna.
It's a lot of like sensible leftist policies, but not like no hooks, no fun taglines. Yeah, she needs a little more to her stuff.
Why don't we pass a bill with Jill?
Yes, that's great.
If the Green Party had a swell of like rapper support, I feel like that would really push her over the edge. Of like the cool underground candidate.
There's some out there, but I feel like they could also be hurt by that, depending on how good the rap is.
Here's a song by Bonnie Raitt about why I should be included in the debate. Jill Stein's number one thing is I need to be in these debates, and it just never happens.
That's screen time, baby. Yeah. That's like telling a comic that they can't go up at the club if they can't go on the debate, That's how you get spotted.
Yeah, she's like to the debates like I am to the New York Comedy Festival, like just saying it's not important, but begging to be getting in.
You get a little sticker when you go.
Yeah. So she goes to Harvard Medical School, graduates 1979, becomes a doctor, and she practices internal medicine. As we said, she was very involved in like environmental health stuff. She was an advocate for the improvement of air quality standards for coal plants, which, that infects people's lungs. And this is at a time, 70s, the EPA is first coming along, and there was like a lot of pollution. The EPA really cracked down on health problems that were caused by just emitting random stuff into the air.
America looked like a Pink Floyd album.
Yeah, it's like the beginning of the environmental movement. Silent Spring came out a little before this. That's like the first environmental book.
Right. And then towards the 90s, she becomes aware of more and more links between toxic exposures and illness. She's involved with Native Americans who are fighting for environmental justice. And there's what's called the Filthy Five coal plants in Massachusetts that eventually get cleaned up. Did you ever hear about the Filthy Five?
Oh, the Filthy Five? I think every boy knew about the Filthy Five back in the 90s.
I'd like to be the guy who like owns number 6, and he's like, we're just clean enough to not have Jill Stein
on
up
his
our ass.
vision board.
Yeah.
He's like, this year I'll be number 1. I'm gonna be the pig in the pan.
Yeah, like they announced the 4, and then he's like, I'm gonna be number 1, and then it turns out he's not even on the list.
So eventually, you know, she's a voter. She votes Democrat a lot of the time, but she doesn't really consider herself part of any political party, and she gets involved in more and more political issues that she discovers are connected to health, and eventually is campaigning for the Clean Elections Law, which is passed in 1998. It's voted on by the people of Massachusetts. Basically says that if you are a candidate, you can opt into matching funds if you set limits on your fundraising. And this is approved by voters, and then eventually in the state legislature, it gets taken out. It basically
That's a damn shame.
yeah, they put an amendment basically defunding it into the budget, which gets voted on a voice vote. So all the people can say like, well, I said nay, but you'll never know because it's their voice.
Tell me the filthy 5 isn't behind this.
Yeah.
The bottoming out of the clean votes
Probably.
with
but,
their grubby little paws,
But,
coal-covered paws.
and then you have to vote up or down on the budget. So if you want to vote against the repeal of the Clean Elections Law, if you to vote against the entire budget, which had a lot of
This
good
is
stuff
a
in it.
classic move.
It is.
I am getting angry. I'm ready to run third party at this point.
Yeah, it can make you angry. And she cites that as a radicalizing experience, but she does run before that comes to pass, before it's repealed though. In 2002, she runs for governor, and you know she's never run for office before. And decides, you know, she's been involved in all these advocacy things and has some success, but has overall decided that it hasn't worked, in that she needs to try something else and they need to get more serious, get more political. So
It is weird to go for governor the first time of
Yeah.
a pretty big state.
Right.
Like it's bigger than some countries.
yeah, she goes big and then she goes down to a couple of, and that's not uncommon with Green Party people like Howie Hawkins. He ran for governor of New York several times. And then, you know, obviously didn't come close to winning, but he did come very close to Albany, or no, he's from Syracuse, their city council. He could have won there. He was just a few votes away, but then he went back to just like running for governor and then president. So they're kind of all over the place.
They're dreamers.
Yeah.
They reach for the heavens.
I mean, as we'll get into, there's an aspersion cast on the Greens a lot that they're too focused on presidential politics, but you do kind of have to run for everything if you want to have like a national ballot line. You do need candidates for like president and other things.
I do like all this Howie Hawkins love. He could be listening. Yeah, and Howie,
Maybe.
come on. We'll do you Vanquished Howie Hawkins edition if you come on.
Yeah. One of her key platform items in her 2002 race for governor is opposition to the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System.
MCAS.
MCAS. Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you remember having to deal with this as a youngster?
Yeah, it's just the standardized test in Massachusetts.
And it sucks?
It's fine. I was always good at those.
Oh, okay.
In New York, we have the regents. Yeah.
It's out to benefit me specifically.
Yeah, those, 'cause any kind of standardized test benefits richer people, also tends to benefit whiter people.
Yeah.
The more time you have
all
to
playing into
prep,
my
it
hands.
helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I took the ACT in Minnesota. That was it. But we took some other test, but it was, I guess Minnesota's not as big on
It's like the same
standardized
kind
testing.
of thing. It's just like a multiple choice questions for
Right.
like 2 hours. And if you aren't getting barraged with those every week anyway, Massachusetts is like very school focused on like a state level. So there's like a lot of money in the public schools, but I don't know there were so many damn quizzes in my high school. I feel like I got a quiz in every class every week, which was too many.
Turkey in every oven, quiz in every class.
There's pretty much a turkey in every oven, but for learning.
It's an unequal sort of system, and it made sense to oppose it, especially with the coalition that was formed. So the Green Party of Massachusetts fused with the Rainbow Coalition of Massachusetts, which is offshoot of Jesse Jackson's campaigns. So it was called the Green Rainbow Party.
Redundant because the rainbow already includes green.
Right. Yeah, that is
Green is in the rainbow.
Right. Yeah, they might have to think of that one a little differently. I mean, green maybe is brighter than the other colors.
When you're trying for the Irish vote, you can't emphasize green as a color. It's everyone's favorite one.
Orange is also in the rainbow, so that does cause some trouble there for the Irish. But she does have because of the Rainbow Coalition aspect, as she's quick to point out in 2002, her campaign is 50% people of color, which is, a knock on the Green Party a lot, that it's just white people, and there are others involved. So at this time, 2002, there's an incumbent who's stepping down. The Democratic nominee is this woman, Shannon O'Brien, who's the state treasurer, who actually, I didn't realize this, beat out Robert Reich in the Democratic primary. So he may have won.
Former Clinton labor secretary.
Right, who was like one of the few progressive economic voices in the Clinton administration. And the Republican nominee was a guy named Mitt Romney, who flew in from Utah. And
Never heard of him.
Do you remember this race at all?
When he ran for governor?
Yeah.
Yes. I think I was like 10 or something when this happened. I wasn't very cognizant of it when it came around, but then by the time he was leaving, I was like, this guy, it's on sight for him. I'll kill him if I see him. I'll tear him limb from limb.
Yeah. I do like that this was the first election you knew about, and you're like, I wish I could vote for Stein. I will vote for Stein at every opportunity in the future.
There is one track of my life that has been consistent, and it is voting and supporting Jill Stein wherever she goes. Yeah. It's called being an ally.
I mean, he was. I think this is the biggest knock on him in 2012. Is he didn't even bother running in 2006. He was so unpopular.
Coward.
In Massachusetts, the state he governed wasn't even in contention for Romney in 12. So.
Massachusetts has a thing where they often pick Republican governors. My father explained this to me at a young age. Of like, oh well, for democracy to work, you have to balance the ideas. So we'll always vote Democrat on a national level and then have a state governor who's a Republican. And at the time I was like, of course. But now that I'm older, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. No, you just have to have no preferences about anything.
Right. It leads to gridlock. And then the same people who will say that will complain about gridlock. And it's like, yeah, one party.
That's you. That's the problem you made.
Right.
You don't know what you want, and that's being reflected on a legislative level.
Yeah. So there's a moment she talks about a lot from this campaign where one of the debates, there are multiple debates, most of them are between O'Brien and Romney, but there is one debate where they have all the candidates who are on the ballot, which includes the Libertarian candidate and this independent, who's this woman who's like a heavy smoker, and
is she smoking during the debate? I really want to see this debate. Jill Stein.
I watched it last night. It's on YouTube. But yeah, she just has like a really thick voice, and so because of that and other things, including the unpopularity of both major party nominees, Jill Stein is regarded the winner of this debate. There's an online poll, and all the viewers say she's killing it. And
she's jilling it.
She's jilling it. And then afterwards, she says in the room, she feels like she bombed because everybody else
hates her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But she goes outside and all the press is like, you're the winner. What happened?
Jill.
And this is, in a way, the highlight of her career.
You're like the Red Sox to us.
I did want to say this is the election she gets the highest percent in, because like she's going to get like over 3%. She's usually a 1% person.
Right.
Also, yeah, the chain smoking lady, Jill added her to the filthy five.
Yeah, I think people heard her and was like, well, this person's not necessarily saying anything bad, just not very telegenic. And Libertarian sounds crazy. And then the two suits running suck, and so they're like, yeah, she makes the most sense. They don't vote for her, but most people think she wins. There is a funny moment where Mitt Romney turns to her and calls her Carla, who's the name of the Libertarian woman.
Flub.
And it's kind of a Binders full of women moment.
Flubs Romney, they call him.
Thank God he didn't have to have multiple wives. That would have been a problem if he was one of those Mormons.
Yeah. So
Why isn't he one of those Mormons? Is there a rule for that?
His granddad had to like flee to Mexico, and then the LDS got rid of it. But yeah, he had it in his blood. Yeah, they didn't want to be outlaws anymore. They wanted to be more established.
But monogamy's back.
We've done 5 hours of Mitt Romney podcasting since we last had you on. So yeah,
we're just a real estate scheme now.
We mentioned this governor race in every episode because Mitt Romney was in it and Jill Stein. Yeah,
you got to give the people what they want.
It's not too late for you, Shannon O'Brien. If you're out there, you could run for president, and unless she's dead, I don't even know.
And then it is too late, unfortunately.
Come back to life.
But Romney wins 49%. Shannon O'Brien gets 44%. Jill gets 3.5.
Let's go.
Which
Huge.
adds up to 76,530 votes. So she is
Kind of a lot of people, you gotta admit.
It's not that bad, and
every vote counts.
Yeah, but she is she's just a couple points away from being a spoiler, which you could have had. That I don't know if that would have been, as we'll see, good or bad for her. She would have gotten more attention, but maybe not good attention if the people of Massachusetts knew her as the woman who threw the election to Romney. But that didn't happen because.
The thing about being a spoiler is you don't have to mathematically do it. You just have to have your presence has to be there,
right,
for the other nominee to lambast you for all of eternity afterwards.
Yeah, the ultimate Jill Stein debate is she taking votes away from the Democrats, or is she getting votes from people who wouldn't have voted or would have voted for another third party?
Yeah,
and that's always the debate,
right? And that's the thing that's kind of impossible to know. So she does run for state representative in 2004. The 9th district includes portions of Waltham, Lexington, where she's from, Lexington. She gets 20. She does actually do good in this. She did 21%, a three-way race, and beats out the Republican.
Pretty good.
Yeah. But the Democrat.
Kind of a spoiler for the Republican there.
In a way, yeah. There are some times where the Greens will end up getting a lot of votes, where it's like Arkansas one year, and they just didn't bother running a Democrat, I think, for Senate. And so the Green got like 20% or something like that.
Okay.
But she goes on sabbatical from being a doctor in 2005. She wants to work on land use and other issues. She is asked if she's going to run for governor again, and she says, at this point, I'm interested in winnable races.
Oh, and she's about to win. Yeah.
That's the funniest answer she could get. Okay.
Yeah, really I don't know why she didn't stick with that, but that was just for that point. And she does.
That's when she sets her sights on the White House.
Yeah.
I mean, in all fairness, and this is the thing she brings up sometimes when people say, well, you've never been elected to anything. And sometimes she forgets to even say this, but she was elected to Lexington Town Meeting.
I don't think she's forgetting so much as choosing not to say that, Anders. It just doesn't sound like a good excuse for being president. But
maybe not. Yeah.
This is where Michael Dukakis, I think his first electoral office was there. Yeah. So
right.
If you've been in town meeting, Anders, what do you call it? Yeah, Alex, sorry, must come on the episode. Sorry, I pulled a Carla with you too. Yeah.
I'll be there.
That it is a weird, unique name for local government, town meeting.
Town meeting.
Sounds very Norman Rockwell.
Yep, very Quakerish.
Yeah.
You know how they have meetings.
They do. But she is elected to one of 7 seats. There's 16 candidates. She does finish first, though. Gets 539 votes. And
that is so few.
It's one of those things, though. It's like it's like at-large situation where the people with the most votes, everybody in the area votes for against everyone.
This could just be your Facebook friends at this point. 539. It is. Well, yeah. So it's 2005, so it's not a big election year. There's no federal elections.
Yeah.
Right. You're only getting real politics heads out to the polls for that one.
Right. And it's hard to find what she actually did on the Lexington Town Meeting. I wasn't able to find that. The local Lexington newspapers don't seem to have much on it.
There's no Wi-Fi there now.
Yeah. I guess not. Yeah, you would think she would talk about her experience there. Because sometimes crazy stuff does happen in local government, and there's exciting things, but we don't know. Maybe she did something bad. Maybe she did some like.
Yeah, she doesn't want to talk about that.
Yeah, maybe it's like conservative policies she rammed through or something.
One thing with her, she's never telling jokes. Yeah, she should have some town meeting jokes.
Yeah. She's not like a funny candidate per se.
Yeah.
The genre of white woman she is not one of the most hilarious kinds I've noticed.
That's fair.
I have an aunt like a Jill Stein, who's a staunch Democrat. Would hate to hear me say that, but if you believe in, you're not like specifically a witch, but you believe in many mystical things, maybe on top of the religion you also have. Then there's no room for joking around because you could be angering spirits.
I have an uncle who, for years, I just assumed was a Republican. Mm-hmm. Because his wife, my aunt, was one. I think now she's like not anymore. But she told me that after 2016, he voted for Jill Stein, and my mind was just like,
let's go.
Like I had no idea this guy. He just, Irish people will just not talk about anything personal
They'll just
or political.
Sit and drink.
Yeah,
quietly until the holiday ends.
I had no idea. I just assumed he was Republican, but he was like a liberal the whole time, and voted for Jill.
My uncle chewed me out last year for voting for Jill Stein.
Really?
At I believe Christmas, and he said that he was chewing me out for Bernie Sanders. Like I wrote in Bernie Sanders. He said I cost Hilary Clinton the 2016 election. I was like, I live in New York. This doesn't make any sense. And he's like, well, you told other people to do it. And I was like, I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah.
This is what I mean about the spoiler thing. Is it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't vote for Stein in 16?
No, I voted for Stein every time, but I'm just saying in my uncle's projection of me that I made Wisconsin voters turn their backs or something.
There are a lot of people who ascribe the Hillary losing the 2016 election to Bernie for various reasons, but one is just him running in the first place made people upset at Hillary Clinton. And then if he hadn't have done that, they would have loved her and voted for her in November.
They would have seen her for the queen she is.
Yeah.
Hillary talks about it in the book What Happened a bit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, Jill and Bernie seem like the couple you wouldn't want to invite to the party.
Oh, yeah? Do you think they could ever get together?
I mean, I'm sure they
could ever...
I'm sure they crossed paths at some point in like the 90s, or maybe not. He's a little older than her, I guess.
I once smooched her in the closet at the DC Christmas party. We could never speak of this.
I mean, he's kind of kept the Green Party at arm's length, despite he was like really adamant about not running as a Democrat when he was Burlington mayor, and then kind of, changed his mind eventually. But by the time the Greens are up and going in like 90s, early 2000s, he's like, no, that won't work.
Yeah.
But she does also run in 2006 for the Secretary of the Commonwealth. It's like a two-way race with an incumbent Democrat, and she gets 17.7%, so that's not bad.
So these are up from 3 and 1, I'm noticing.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, the other guy probably got 80%. So
right.
Just because in a two-way race, 17% is like,
I don't see in 2 digits. That's one of the most you can have in a 3-digit race.
Yeah.
Unless you get 100.
It is cool. They call it. They don't even call it Secretary of State. They call it Secretary of the Commonwealth officially, which is what Massachusetts is technically.
It's a beautiful Commonwealth.
It's not even a state. Should it have all the rights of a state?
It's also the spirit of America.
Fair enough. She steps down from Lexington Town Council or town meeting in 2010 to run for.
Down.
She runs for governor of Massachusetts. Announces her candidacy in February in front of the Massachusetts State House.
Well, surely she won that one.
Despite running with Richard Purcell, who was an ergonomics assessor, she did not vanquish Deval Patrick. She gets 1%.
Deval Patrick was the man in 2004 or 6 or whatever this was.
2010. He
2010.
runs initially in 2006.
Yeah. I remember being in high school and seeing the Deval Patrick lawn signs.
Because there had been 4 Republican governors before Deval Patrick. Why was that, and how did he pull it off?
I think it probably helps that he had, like, not that it was like, I think it was a parallel phenomenon to like Obama running for president, and that like you have Massachusetts, which is kind of a microcosm of America, and that it's like a racist, segregated place. And then this like very nice, clean cut, polite black guy comes up and is like, "I'm looking to do common sense reforms," and people are like, "Maybe we do this now." And yeah, he's just very bland as a candidate. He's not like very bombastic or anything, and he's like a new progressive face of the Democratic Party. And it's 2006 when this happens, right? So like Green Day has told you never to vote Republican again, and Iraq is happening, and all of this stuff. And it's just there was a leftward swing in the country that has we've since completely lost. But remember that. We could have had Jill.
Yeah, this is the midterms where Bush gets killed, kind of the nadir of the war. Yeah, even Donald Rumsfeld's finally going to get fired. So it's time for a Democrat to take back Massachusetts.
Right. And then by 2008, there are 0 Congress people who are Republicans from New England as a whole. There's like one guy holding out, and he gets copped in 2008.
And then Deval Patrick, I feel like almost similar to Jill Stein, really tarnishes his reputation by running for president later.
Yeah, and he bows in very late, and nobody had cared about him except for our friend David Twitty.
Yeah, David Twitty loves him. Comedian David Twitty, to this day, posts about Deval Patrick and how he's a Deval dude, and he thinks Deval can still win. But he's the only one in America.
Yeah.
This is in 2020, right? Like he was trying to run like when Biden didn't seem like he was going to be the centrist standard bearer.
Yeah.
Deval was jumping in. Bloomberg jumped in.
Right.
Deval did it worse than Bloomberg.
If he had gotten in earlier, maybe he would be president right now, because somebody had to. Biden was just the last guy standing against Bernie. So
see, my theory was that the House was going to bet on Biden from the beginning, just because he was VP for Obama before, and
That's
Obama essentially like set up the coup de grace play.
Yeah.
There, but
that's true. Obama doesn't like Biden though. He didn't want him to. I don't think he wanted him to run.
He didn't want him to run, but I feel like once it was in, was like, my guys work for. I've been watching Veep lately, and it's really the idea of there are staffers who stay between administrations is really like stuck in my mind right now. And I think there are probably a lot of Obama guys hanging out with Joe Biden.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where it was like, you guys still get to make all the decisions in the White House.
Right. But how was Deval Patrick as governor overall?
One of the best. I don't know.
It seems
I never made any money while he was over there.
Seems like a fairly moderate Democrat.
Yeah, he's like a conservative Democrat.
Yeah.
He was probably pretty similar to Romney. Romney was pretty liberal for a Republican at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Romney, famously, he passed Romney Care, which then later became Obamacare. As a early precursor. So I don't even know if Deval Patrick has anything that level that he pushed.
And one of the only voices of dissent in that whole thing was people like Jill Stein in Massachusetts saying like you both agree on this private boondoggle scheme. Right. Let's have
She was right even back then.
It's true.
Yeah, she has said, Obamacare wasn't a step towards universal health care.
Right. And she saw it firsthand in Massachusetts, what would happen.
They didn't listen.
Didn't. So I remember 2008, I was too young to vote by a few months. And
that was a bummer. I definitely would. They would have got the Democratic vote out of me for that one.
Yeah.
I voted for Obama.
Yeah.
They probably would have, but in a way, I was kind of glad I wasn't able to vote because I was genuinely a little conflicted because I was a Nader fan, but he obviously wasn't going to win. And the prospect of a black president was really, really, really exciting at that point. So I may probably have voted for Obama.
And also, people didn't know anything about Barack Obama.
Right, or what he was going to do. And
or at least I didn't know shit about anything. So.
Yeah. But because I had Ralph Nader in my ear for the whole 2008 cycle saying, like, this guy's he's not doing what you think he's going to do.
He's slippery.
I was very quickly, like,
slippery Mary.
I was not a fan of Obama pretty quickly into his presidency. And I was looking for an alternative. It was like, we got to run somebody in 2012. Ralph, are you going to run again? He didn't want to run again. And who's left? There's Rocky Anderson, who's a mayor of Salt Lake City, who tried to form a new political party. And
did he get the multiple wives, or did he miss that too?
No, he did not have multiple wives.
Okay.
He's, I think, a bachelor, if I'm not mistaken. But
Whoa.
Different girl every night then.
I remember him starting off his campaign, and people were like, why aren't you running for the Green Party? And he's like, well, the Green Party is an organizational disaster, and we need a new political party. And then he starts one, and this is something that happens, you come for it's like the meme with death knocking on the different doors.
Yeah.
They have all these attempts at creating progressive third parties that are going to be the better version of the Greens, and they just tank, and they do even worse than the Greens.
Not as easy as it looks, is it?
Yeah.
It's not. It's, in a two-party system, like, maybe that is the best they can do. And it's sad, but that's kind of the reality.
Now, I don't know how many episodes you guys have done on Green Party candidates.
Not many.
It's our
This is the
first
one, yeah.
We will do a full
okay.
Green Party. Nader's coming up at some point.
Because I don't know how much this has come up, but isn't the famous criticism of the Green Party is that they get a small budget from their votes every presidential election, where they get 1% and they get like a certain stipend or something to.
There's match funding for sure.
They get match funding, and then they just spend it all on running for president again, and they don't do anything ever.
Yeah, I mean, that is not an unfair criticism, but at the same time, like I was saying earlier, you to have the ballot line in all those states for other offices, you kind of need to run a presidential candidate. That's what they say. I mean, in 1996, there were a lot of people who were very skeptical of Nader's candidacy, which was kind of a non-candidacy. We'll get into in his episode, but they thought we should focus. We shouldn't run a presidential candidate. We should focus on state and local. But
save that glory for Jill Stein.
Yeah. In a way, I guess this is kind of my criticism of them, is it makes sense to have like a centralized kind of campaign that is complementing like the other ones. But the problem is the party is by design super decentralized, so you can't like effectively coordinate those other races
Right.
because it can be, and they have trouble recruiting people, and sometimes it's like, anti-vax cranks, or 9/11 was an inside job thing, or Bush did 9/11 types.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's
Not to
nothing
say
sketchy.
he didn't, because he did. But you shouldn't say it while running.
Well, you
for
should,
stuff.
and also the controlled demolition stuff is nonsense.
Yeah, my mom saw the plane, so yeah. If any green people are listening, there's the planes
His
were
mom's
real.
on, so
Yeah, my mom saw 'em.
definitely happened for sure.
Right. Suffice to say, there's kind of a fetish on the left for decentralization, which the exact opposite of that is really bad. Everything's super tightly controlled and centralized, but it's also not good to have everything very loosely organized and to not have like, a central thing. But they should, I think ideally they would have presidential campaign that's also building and helping establish a foothold in like other bodies. They have had some success on the city council level, we should say, and they've had some mayors here and there. So it's not as if they've never won any other races, and they do run at the local level a lot.
In areas where the Democratic Party is completely packed up and left town, they run for office. I think it's worth saying as a structural criticism that a lot of the stuff of like, the Green Party doesn't do this or that, they have no money.
Yeah.
Compared to the Democrats or the Republicans, it's not like these parties are brought up by small donors. There's like major political donors who essentially buy off Democratic and Republican politicians and donate massive world-changing sums to the party apparatus in general. And they are not hanging out with the Green Party execs or whatever that is. There's no buy-in on that level. And on that, after that, what do you do with the money you don't have?
Right. There has been an attempt to, and there has been some like people from kind of the solar industry who are involved in the Green Party, and trying to get their payout.
You'd think they would be all in on the Democrats. This is what I mean.
I mean, even to this day, they're not really like giving federal money directly to solar.
Right.
I mean, in some capacities, but not as much as the Greens are talking about.
I know that one thing is like they've lost members during the Jill Stein era, I think. Like it's something that comes up with that. So yeah, they aren't necessarily growing as a whole.
I mean, I think a problem is every time in the past 25 years that they've gotten a bunch of attention and the campaign has had like a lot of momentum and done its best has also been in a year when a Republican has won. So if you could get those two things flipped, maybe this will happen in a few weeks where Stein does really well and Kamala wins. That hasn't happened before, so that may be a new precedent for the Green Party.
Sure. I mean, doesn't it, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but doesn't it look like they're set to do better than ever on a presidential race because the Democrats have completely lost Michigan?
Yeah, we'll get to that. But
Okay. I'm getting
depending
ahead. I'm
on,
getting too
I mean,
far
there
ahead.
is a phenomenon of people saying one thing in the polls and then doing something else in the voting booth.
Yeah, they usually underperform their poll numbers.
Yeah.
Like I think in 2016 she was polling at like 2%, and then she got 1%, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think she's polling too excitingly in this race.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on.
I think she's going to win.
If we all vote for her, she's gonna win.
That
you
is
vote for
true,
her,
and
she
that
can
was
win.
and that was my argument in 2012 to people. I would call it a self-fulfilling prophecy when they would say, well, why would I vote for her? She's not going to win. And then over the years, I realized that makes no sense.
You were on your Liz Warren game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is what I said at the time. It's like if you believe that, then you have to then write in Elizabeth Warren in the general election in 2020.
Right.
But yeah, I remember.
Famously, they did, and she's president.
But anyway, yeah, like so. There's Rocky Anderson. Maybe Nader's going to run. He says no, and the Green Party is kind of what's left there. And they, there's a few random socialist parties and stuff, but that they're like going into 2012 the strongest contender for like progressive alternative vote. She announces in 2011 on the heels of like Occupy Wall Street, and she writes in a public questionnaire that Green activists have come to her and asked her to run after her Massachusetts gubernatorial campaign. And this is after the debt ceiling crisis as well, where Obama went after Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Finally.
Yeah, and that made a lot of people mad. And thankfully, they couldn't get the deal done, so he wasn't able to cut it. But he definitely wanted to.
He tried.
Yeah. She does have to win the Green primary, which has a motley crew of characters.
Would love to watch a debate for one of those.
I think I did at one point. And Roseanne Barr was a candidate for a moment there.
Huh.
And then she tried to form, because, she was kind of left adjacent for a while. PSL, I know, endorsed her candidacy for a little bit.
And then she got into Hitler cosplay, which
Yeah.
is kind of an addictive subculture.
Yeah.
Roseanne's been everywhere, but yeah, she was a Trumper in 2016 or 2020, and then she was in that RFK video where he talked about killing the bear.
Right.
So she's been everywhere, yeah.
Right. She is kind of, if you look up the word populist in the dictionary, you might see a picture of her because she's, kind of all over the place, but like a lot of Americans.
Granted, you'll need a picture dictionary.
Yeah.
I mean, possible GOP 2028 nominee, Roseanne. It's on the table. It's on the table. Yeah. Yeah. Thank God we're videotaping as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Call your shot now.
But
Make me VP.
It's Roseanne and Freddie.
I mean, I wonder why I think, because I remember following that and I thought about it for a second. I was like, no, I'd prefer someone like Jill Stein who can basically just stay on message, because it wasn't clear if Roseanne could do that. And I think because, maybe a safe bet. They definitely would have gotten more attention and probably more votes if Roseanne Barr had been the nominee.
You're like someone who's completely not funny over the sitcom star.
Yeah.
I do generally feel for modern spectacle politics that you're probably better off just getting a stern staff around any celebrity and just trying to make them run a serious campaign. Just because the odds of somebody going to the voting booth and being like, well, I don't know any of these names except Roseanne Barr, who is married to John Goodman, I think. I'll vote for her, sure.
Yeah, maybe they should have done it. But Stein gets a nomination. And
Is she married to John Goodman in her show? I don't think I've seen it.
On the
in
show,
the show,
yeah.
not in real life. In real life, it was Tom Arnold.
Okay.
Then they got divorced.
That's too bad.
Yeah. But she nominates as her vice presidential pick Sherry Hunkala, who is
Uncle.
yeah,
It does
she-
sound like a fake name when you pronounce it.
Yeah, I've got a vice president. Oh yeah, it's Sherry.
A horn honks outside. yeah.
Uncle.
Yeah, you look at
Sherry
a
Hunkala.
car horn as you're trying to come up with a name. Yeah, she is. I actually
today.
I did know about her before this because she was in a documentary that came out with Philip Seymour Hoffman about the 2000 election, where he's like touring the cities of the two party political conventions, and in Philadelphia, where the Republicans nominated Bush in 2000, he goes and meets with this woman who's a housing activist and anti-poverty organizer, and that was my first exposure to her. And then she runs for vice president in 2012. She had been a Green before this, though. She ran for sheriff.
Sherry for sheriff.
Oh my God, how'd she not
Maybe
win?
that's why. Yeah.
I'm hunking for justice.
But in 2011, it's during Occupy Wall Street, she runs for sheriff on an anti-eviction platform because sheriffs in a lot of cities are tasked with evicting people,
Right.
which is bad.
They're like TV cops,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah, I think Michael Moore in the Roger and Me doc. I think it's his first big doc. Yeah, that he follows a sheriff type person around.
They wear the big hat. They wear a sheriff's hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, in rural areas, sheriffs are super powerful. I read a book about it recently.
Yeah, in cities, that's basically their only job is to evict you.
They probably say howdy when they do it too. Stuff like that.
Yeah, and he had been the head of Kensington Welfare Rights Union, co-founded the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign.
Are there a lot of lib sheriffs? I feel like this is probably like the most MAGA job available.
I guess probably in lib areas they're libs, but yeah,
It is a job that leans right. Yeah, she was trying to basically become sheriff, then do nothing and just help people.
Change it from the inside.
Yeah.
right.
She does put on a sheriff hat and ride a horse at some point. Yeah.
Nicer tin cans for the cell.
Yeah. She rides a horse down Allegheny Avenue in Philly. She's wearing a similar hat to a Stetson, and she's talking about Occupy Wall Street and expressing solidarity with them. And she gets third place, over 10,000 votes, which isn't bad. And then eventually with Jill Stein, she, later in 2016, she's not running for vice
Yeah,
president.
that's something
again,
she did
but
on her. She doesn't get the re-nomination for the Greens, but she's doing this on her own in 2016.
Yeah, they're protesting in Philadelphia because the Democratic convention is there in 2016, and she organizes a fart-in to greet the rhetorical flatulence of Hillary Clinton with the real thing. So
What?
she feeds.
What is the idea for this?
She gets a bunch of.
Go in a room and fart because that's
Yeah.
pretty much what Hillary Clinton's doing downtown.
Yeah,
These Dems are full of hot air.
right. She has a bunch of people over. They eat
Nobody
a big.
wants to go to a fart in.
Yeah.
You got to bring this idea back to the drawing board. This is not a good political event.
No, I think this is what cost Hillary the election.
The stench.
People thought she was in
Yeah,
that
she
fart in.
got a little delirious during her nomination speech because she's all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Where am I? It smells like hell.
But in 2012, Sherry and Jill are arrested during a sit-in at a bank to protest Fannie Mae foreclosures. As Stein says, developers and financiers made trillions of dollars through the housing bubble, and every effort of the Obama administration has been to prop this system up, keep it going at taxpayer expense. Time for laws to be rewritten. And as John Nichols points out, their rhetoric on the banking issue is very similar to Roosevelt's. So they score some brownie points with him.
Yeah, they got something else similar to Roosevelt also.
What's that?
They got a Green New Deal.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I didn't know that the Green New Deal came from the Green Party until I started researching this.
Yeah,
the Democrats have kind of co-opted it. Now, Jill Stein didn't invent it. It might have actually been invented by someone else. But the first party to run on it is the Green Party, and at least in America, it's Jill Stein in 2012. Go ahead.
Right. And yeah, that's a big reason why I voted for them at the time, because how do you have climate change Obama wasn't doing anything serious about, and still massive poverty. Let's put those together. Do something good.
I don't remember what Hillary Clinton's stance on climate change was, because
she was against it in theory.
Against it in theory, so kind of the 2020 stance as well.
Yeah, I'm sure she had like tax breaks and stuff at the ready. I'm sure there was like some investment.
Yeah,
but nothing compared to at that point. So 2012,
just get John Kerry in as climate czar.
Yeah,
turn this whole thing around.
Yeah.
I mean, so in 2016, Bernie did not run on a Green New Deal. And I remember wanting something like that from him because of this campaign in 2012. And I do remember thinking, well, New Deal, I think sometimes people overestimate how popular that phraseology is, because most people in America were not alive during the Roosevelt administration.
Right.
And maybe they heard about it in history class, but it's not like front of mind.
Big with nerds.
Yeah, so you should come up with like a new term for it. But I think at the end of the day, it is still effective. But Bernie didn't run on it till after AOC introduced it in 2019. It's an issue of some consternation as to who came up with it. The Green Party people will say it was stolen from them.
They have the name the Green Party. I feel like you got to give it to them. I understand it's green because of trees or whatever, but it's a Green Party-ish thing.
It does seem like a Green Party thing. Now, one credit is Thomas Friedman, the not green author, uses the phrase Green New Deal in an article in 2007.
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah, but I think he meant like it would be like the New Deal in that a lot of money would be spent, but it would all be by the private sector or something.
Oh, green like in dollar bills.
Yeah,
yeah, we got a New Deal about making dollar bills.
But he is talking about green energy at least.
Yeah, that's true. But so they do campaign on that, a Green New Deal for America, and that's why I think the campaign was valuable, is at least you get that out into the ether, although very few people had actually heard of it until 2019. They call for an emergency 4-part program of specific solutions to move America into a secure green future, massive public investment in green energy, not just tax breaks, investing in co-ops that are going to create green energy. Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Give Elon Musk another blank check to do some stuff.
Yeah. But a general thing with the Green New Deal is basically like, we're going to fight climate change, but you get stuff. You get jobs, you get social programs. It's a positive view of fighting climate change, not just we have to use less electricity and like sounding like the Grinch.
Right. The Australian Greens have, and it differs country to country. So in Britain, they call it the Green Industrial Revolution. In Australia, their Green Party talks about a green plan.
Green plan.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like a full name.
It's not as fun, yeah. But
Green plan.
Green Industrial Revolution actually is good.
Yeah, well, they have an older country, so they remember, back in Oliver Twist times, the Industrial Revolution is a really big deal here,
right?
Because it stopped the Peaky Blinders from blinding so many of our young people.
Yeah. Also, marijuana. She's for legalizing that when that's still a bit of a controversial topic. Yeah. And in 2012, there's a poverty tour, which Tavis Smiley and Cornel West had done this in like 2009. But they do a Poverty Tour 2.0 where throughout...
Older and poorer.
Yeah. Throughout September 2012, Stein goes to different parts of the country, and she's, inspired by what Tavis Smiley and Cornel West have done. And it's designed to bring attention to people who are still suffering from poverty, And this coincides with the Chicago teachers strike in September of 2012.
Similar to the fart march or whatever. I feel like it can't feel good to show up to the events on the poverty tour.
Yeah.
I heard you guys are broke.
Yeah, I mean it's
God, I hope Jill
aspirational.
Stein wins this election. Or I'm fucked.
Imagine being the hot dog vendor, and it's like you got to lower the prices.
I mean, she could
You're
have called
losing
it.
money on the hot dog.
Yeah.
She could have called it the 47% tour because Romney had castigated the 47% of the country who was broke and
That'll
dependent
get
on
him.
Yeah,
See, Obama got tagged with that, even though he was trying to, at some point, slim down Social Security.
right. And then she also visits Occupy Wall Street, which I was actually there for. I had just moved to New York and I went
She
down
signed
there
her
and
tits.
I wanted her to. I would have taken that, but I got a handshake and that was nice.
Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah. And she, in October 2012, there's a debate happening at Hofstra. And as Nader had done in 2000, Jill Stein and Sherry Honkala show up to protest their lack of inclusion in this debate between Obama and Romney.
Does she get arrested?
She's, yes, not only arrested, taken to a warehouse and strapped for 8 hours to chairs with plastic wrist restraints.
Dear God.
They don't mess around on Long Island.
And eventually they just get let out. There's no charges. It's just catch and release type of thing. but,
Rendition to a CIA black site where they tortured Jill Stein for several years.
Obama was happy that he won that debate, saved his campaign. It's like, okay, you can let them go.
Right.
I understand why she makes such a big deal out of it. If I was strapped to a chair for 8 hours, I'm gonna bring it up a lot for the rest of my life.
It's too long to go without using your phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Although, do they let you use your phone in jail? Because my friend Ben got arrested last weekend for vaping. And he was texting me in jail, and I was like, they let you have the phone in there? So I don't know if he had gotten out already or what, but...
I think they... I've been in jail once, and I had a flip phone at the time. And I think I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, I thought they take... If you're vaping, they're like, okay, this guy needs his phone. He's too young.
Yeah.
He won't be able to function,
He's going to freak out.
Well...
He needs stimulation.
But, some other issues. She's against... fracking, which is, controversial stance to take at the time. She wants to nationalize the Federal Reserve, renegotiate the free trade regimen, NAFTA, etc., end corporate welfare, hike the minimum wage, establish universal health care, single payer, and repeal the Patriot Act and the NDAA, which has been passed at that point. And reverse Citizens United, close all overseas U.S. military bases, which has kind of, as an issue, fallen by the wayside.
What was the NDAA doing? I know it's the Defense Authorization Act, but what were they actually taking over?
There was a measure in it that was really controversial that was pushed through that had to do with, I think it may have been extraordinary rendition or surveillance or just an increase in the security state.
The framing on the NDAA when this was happening was they're doing the Patriot Act again. It's a new Patriot Act. So you wanted to get the anti-war people.
Right.
You would say, we're not doing that. We're actually closing every military base, of which we have 700.
Yeah.
And they're all surrounding China in a big circle.
Yeah, the big thing with the Federal Reserve thing is just like the bank should be in control by the government. And the Federal Reserve is a little bit independent. She's saying put it under the Treasury so the president could just kind of probably just fire the head more easily and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, it should be democratic. So in September 2012, she gets 2% in the polls.
Okay.
And, it's not nothing. But then by election day, it's
double 1%.
down. Yeah. It's down to 0.36%. She gets 469,501 votes. I love when it's like, a candidate I voted for, and I can look at the total and see myself there. Like, oh,
yeah, that's me.
yeah.
Wait a minute.
That won.
Yeah, it would be $4.99 without these people in this room.
It would be, yeah. It would be 469,499, but it's 501 because of me and
yet
Alex.
we still cost Hillary Clinton the election. Can you believe it?
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Vanquished. If you want the full thing, because there is more, please go to patreon.com/The Vanquished, where you can get the rest of this episode as well as our full episode catalog. You can support our work as well as annoy us in the comments.